Hello, this is Erica Hassel from the Field Museum, and I use the Mike Novak Show's website to learn about native plant sales. You're listening to WCGO Radio 1590 and 95.9, Chicago's Smart Talk. The Mike Novak Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
This guy's a real jerk. He thumbs his nose at rules and basic common sense, acting like he's the only one who matters. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a beer on a boat if you do it responsibly. But that's a big if for this jerk. This jerk's an accident waiting to happen. Sit up and keep your eyes on the water, jerk. Irresponsible boating endangers not only you, but others on the water. Hey, jerk, you're too close to the shore and you're gonna get stuck. We warned you. It's important to be aware of your surroundings at all times to avoid mishaps or more serious accidents. This jerk's equally as clueless in a kayak, running through the lines of those fishing near the shore. Some jerks also have no concept of personal space. When someone else hooks a fish, he swoops right in the same spot. What a jerk move. The worst kinds of jerks are the ones who leave a mess behind wherever they go. That's not a sports drink. Sure, fishing line mishaps happen, but not disposing of it properly can be deadly for wildlife. Jerk. Our message is simple. Follow the rules, use common sense, and stay safe to ensure a pleasurable experience for all preserve visitors. In other words, don't be a jerk.
It's the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki. Green, gardening, and environment radio. Flavored with a dash of humor. Welcome to intelligent, irreverent talk about plants and the planet they grow on. Your questions, comments, and participation are always welcome at 877-711-5611.
Good planets are hard to find. Temperate zones and tropic climes. True currents and thriving seas. Wind blowing through breathing trees. Strong ozone and safe sunshine. Well, good planets are hard to find. Good planets are in demand.
This hour is brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com.
Jet streams, perfect air.
And here they are, Peggy Malecki and Mike Novak.
Well, good planets are in demand. Right.
Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen, and I have to throw just a word of caution here.
Don't be a jerk.
There we go.
Thank you.
All right. A shout out as we start the show, because we are going full tilt boogie today on insects and bugs and whatever. You know, I use the term, and I got two scientists in the room, and maybe you guys can help me with this. I use the term bugs to mean it all. And I know bug is actually a particular term in the scientific world, is it not? Yeah. Okay. Allen Lawrance is here in the studio. Doug Taron is here in the studio. They both work at the Peggy Notebaert Nature Museum. Actually, you might, for those of you who are old school, it's the Chicago Academy of Sciences. Doug is the chief curator. Alan is associate curator, and they're both entomologists. And now to finish the question, if you say bug, you mean a particular thing, don't you?
Yeah, there are, two different types of bug. There's the colloquial bug where you're just talking about any creepy crawly, but in entomology, there's a group of insects called the true bugs, which belong to the order Hemiptera. They all have piercing, sucking, sort of needle-like mouth parts, so they can feed on plant juices or animal juices. And actually, there's a little bit of debate if you ask an entomologist right now about what a true bug really is, because there's been a taxonomy change recently where there were 2 orders, Homoptera and Hemiptera, and only the Hemiptera were true bugs, but then later the Homoptera were put into the Hemiptera.
Who makes those changes?
Who makes the changes? Taxonomists make the changes. I mean, the change is legitimate, but the debate is over whether is it all these insects combined together are now bugs, or some things that weren't true bugs before are now true bugs, or is it only what was formerly the true bugs remain the true bugs?
Okay, we've lost half our audience right there. But thank you, Alan, for that explanation. But no, that's the point I'm trying to make, is that there's science behind it. However, for the purpose of radio and the people I talk to, I differentiate insects from bugs. I use bugs as the big picture. So when I say bugs, I'm talking about anything that crawls or slimes or, wanders around in your compost pile or in your house, whatever, just so that it's the bigger picture. And then I try to differentiate from arachnids and insects and that sort of thing. But as you say, it's very specific, Alan, so I'm not dissing you here, even though I played crickets during that. And the whole point was to give a shout out to the Will County Forest Preserve District for the Don't Be a Jerk series of videos that they've done. You're nodding, so you're familiar with that, Doug. I love them.
Yeah.
This is the 4th in the series. That's what you heard at the beginning of the show. Don't be a jerk when you go out to the Forest Preserve, and they talk about bringing your dog, about garbage, about litter, about waterways. That's this one, and using the trail.
Using the trail.
Yeah. So, look at Andrew jumping through hoops of fire to try to keep all the microphones working
Trying
properly.
to keep you from echoing.
Yeah, that's right. All right, we'll be back. The Mike Novak Show, Peggy Malecki. We're talking bugs today.
Move your mic.
McHenry County College Green Living Expo returns on Saturday, November 2nd, and it's packed.
Thank you.
Sustainable
That should help a little.
Yeah. The clean transportation
Kept looking away.
features luxury electric. Yeah, it's what happens is all the mics being open at the same. Oh, you're trying to get the camera shot. Which camera is it?
Is your host camera okay?
Is my what?
Your host camera?
He's a little high up there, but his head's not cut off.
I mean, I can get up there if you want.
Yeah, I just don't want to.
Somebody's gonna stand here though, because I can't.
I'll do it during
Well, no, we can do it real quick if we have somebody here. Peggy?
Andrew can.
Free and open to the public. Peggy and I will be there. Come and join us. McHenry County College. Oh yeah, you can actually reach it. So there. 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Go to mchenry.edu/greenexpo or contact me.
That's
Good
better.
enough. That's good enough. Good enough.
Much better.
479-7765.
City Grange, Chicago's newest and most unique garden center, wants to remove all barriers to your gardening success. How? By providing organic heirloom plants for your kitchen garden, pollinator-friendly natives and annuals, container planting to go. They deliver the plants, you
We've
put
got
them in. Who
Lynette
does that?
is listening from Albuquerque
special events
on
and
TuneIn.
more. They even have complimentary valet
Lynette.
parking on weekends.
Lynette.
5500 Northwestern Avenue at Catalpa. CityGrange.com.
Perlikevich.
Shop
What?
plus
Perlikevich, something like
Okay,
that.
cool. Hi, Lynette, if you're listening in Albuquerque. Cool. I would hit a ding, but I left the dingers at home.
We use as a ding.
We are changing policy, changing farming, and changing the story by working with farmers to build alternatives that put animals, farmers, and communities first. To learn more about Farm Forward's work to end animal suffering and advance sustainable agriculture, visit www.farmforward.com and sign up for our monthly newsletter and find out what you can do to help. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Farm Forward.
It's jungle out there, disorder and confusion everywhere.
Not in the world of entomology.
No one seems to care. Well, I do. Hey, who's in charge here?
Well, I am, of course.
Out there, poison in the very air we breathe. You know what's in the water that you drink?
No.
Well, I do. And it's amazing.
Welcome back to the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki. I still think that in some ways, this is our real theme song, this one.
Attention, all this world we love so much
Might just,
might just kill you.
yep.
I could be wrong now.
I don't think so.
But I don't think so, 'cause there's the jungle out there. There's the jungle out there.
Especially when it comes to insects and spiders and worms and millipedes and centipedes and all those great creatures crawl around, with apologies to Allen Lawrence, bugs. And
You can say bug. I have no quarrel with the colloquial bug.
He's not the taxonomist here.
no, and I know, and I'm just, it's here's the difficulty. It is, I try to be as science-based as I can, but at a certain point, if you start losing people, you got to make it more colloquial. You got to bring them back into the conversation. And you're nodding, Doug. I imagine you run into that all the time.
Sure. I know when I was first starting into bugs way back in the day, the professional entomology community would get a lot more upset about the incorrect use of the word bug, and people are a lot more tolerant of it now.
Good. I'm so glad, because if you don't have the public on your side, you're going to lose the battle. And the way to get the public in is to keep them in the game, I guess. Make them comfortable with these terms. Meanwhile, you do your science, and I do my science as much as I can. To educate the public. So it's this fine line. You got to split the difference. Oh, and by the way, getting back to the conversation that we started at the very beginning of the show, if you want to find any of these videos, Don't Be a Jerk videos, which are really cool, you can go to reconnectwithnature.org, www.reconnectwithnature.org. Again, it's the Will County Forest Preserve District. They are a county near the Chicago area, in the Chicago area, near Chicago. And I just love the videos, and they apply all over the country. Doesn't matter where you are. There's forest preserve districts everywhere, and open areas and natural areas, and they're teaching people how not to be stupid. Because you've got to look out for plants, you've got to look out for critters there, and just the quality of life and the quality of your experience in a forest preserve or an open area. So go check out those videos at www.reconnectwithnature.org. Look for the big thumb and the pointing finger. Don't be a jerk, okay?
Well, they've actually been getting a lot of write-ups around the country.
Have
What
they?
they're doing, yeah.
I wasn't sure, and I'm sure glad. In fact, I was going to post something on our Facebook page about that, because I've been putting those videos up.
What a jerk move.
I know, it is on my part. All right, but today we are talking bugs, insects, and as I said, a lot of different critters. And we should start, as we usually do, with monarchs, because they're the charismatic megafauna of the insect world. And this is what, and I guess they're the gateway insect, aren't they? So what's the status? I'm reading, we posted some things at MikeNovak.net. Go to MikeNowak.net, and you'll see some articles. I was looking around, found articles all over the eastern part of the United States, because we are dealing with the eastern monarch population, that says the numbers are really good this year, and we're hearing reports of roosting on their way back south, because they're headed south. Now, you told me the other day, Doug, that you thought the roosting was just south of Chicago.
Right.
So I missed it once again. Okay. So tell us about the numbers, and what are you hearing?
Well, of course, we work every year with the Illinois Butterfly Monitoring Network, and the network itself has had a very good year this year. We've gotten an enormous number of surveys in, so even though the very last of the surveys are still trickling in, we've got enough data to look at. And when we look at the monarch, we find that since the early 1990s, this year is the fourth highest population that has been recorded by the butterfly monitors. Now, you may be having a sense of deja vu here, because a year ago I was here talking to you and said it is the fourth highest year that we have had since the early 1990s. Well, we just barely edged out last year.
You're a broken record, dude. But that's encouraging. And I saw the graph probably at one of the sites. I've got it up here, and it was Journey North. And they've got this line that they call the sustained population of 6 hectares is the target for monarch recovery, and we're at 6.05 coming out of last winter. All right, so that's where we were going into this summer. Now coming out of the summer, the numbers are good. So it bodes well for what's going to happen in Mexico, I imagine, this winter.
One of the things that we have found with the data here in Illinois is that it is a very good predictor of the numbers that you will see in Mexico the following winter. Interestingly, the reverse of that does not really seem to be nearly as true. What you see in Mexico in the winter is a very poor predictor of what you will see up here the following summer. So I think it's important to remember when looking at numbers like this that, like all insects, the monarch population numbers jump around a lot from year to year. And so a few years back, around 2012, 2013, we had a couple of really terrible years for the monarch. And I kept saying to people, don't panic too much here. A couple of bad years doesn't necessarily mean that, all is doomed. I'm going to say the reverse of that now. The numbers jump around a lot. A couple of really good years doesn't necessarily mean we're out of the woods yet. So
that's why I titled my blog "An Amazing Year" in quotes for Eastern Monarchs ? Because I anticipated what you were going to say, which is just, and I know the people who listen to this show and who I engage with in social media. They think I'm a doomsayer, okay, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm cool with that. I still think that we're losing too much habitat. I still think that pesticides are. Okay. All you got to do is look at the report that came out this week. It said 1/3 of our songbird population has disappeared in 50 years, and that gives pause. If that doesn't give pause to you, you're not paying attention. So there's a correlation between the bird population and the insect population, I would imagine.
Well, given the, particularly with songbirds, the percentage of species that rely on insects for food, sure. And one of the things, Alan and I gave a paper earlier this year at the Wild Things Conference that talked about long-term declines that we have seen in both butterfly and dragonfly populations here in Illinois as monitored by the Butterfly Monitoring Network and the Odinate survey. So, the long-term trajectory does not seem great here.
No. So while it's good to celebrate the fact that we've seen a lot of monarchs out here, as Doug says, be cautious about that because it doesn't. And the other argument we had last year, which was very cool, was what is the proper way to measure the population of monarchs? Your point is that a lot of people say, well, the official count is what happens in Mexico, and you said, no, not really. You can count during the summer, too. That's really important, too. It's harder to quantify than it is in Mexico, but it also has its place.
Yeah, and there are a number of surveys that happen in particular with the monarch at different times of the year. Right about now, there are going to be a series of surveys, probably most famously in Cape May, New Jersey, where people try to get a handle on the size of the migratory population, which is not something specifically measured by the Illinois Butterfly Monitoring Network, for example. During the summer, there are several programs that use very different data collection protocols that survey the monarchs, and one of the interesting things about that is when we have compared these, we can see very good correlation in many cases between the numbers that are obtained with different data collection protocols. So that suggests that we're all seeing real stuff out there, and in particular for a program like the Illinois Butterfly Monitoring Network, which is a citizen science program. For a long time, there was questions, can people with no formal training in science collect good data? And this really argues that, well, yes, they can, and they are.
Well, and the way you look at that, you can look at that also in terms of Journey North, which is a citizen science organization that just this year had moved its headquarters to Madison, Wisconsin, to the Arboretum there, and they have engaged citizen scientists for 25 years to monitor populations of insects. So this is really, so it's important stuff. And I don't want to get into I want to get off of monarchs pretty soon because they would monopolize the conversation. It's like when you try to talk gardening and it turns to lawns, and then lawns suck up all the air in the room. So I don't want to do that either. But let's finish real quick. And Alan, by the way, anything that you want to add right now to jump in? I'm sorry, Doug. I've been pointing at Doug here, but I'll point at you. You're
on.
Yeah, I'm on. Well, it's also, as you're mentioning, we want to get off monarchs at some point because they're not the only butterfly we should be concerned with. There are a lot of locally imperiled species we should be worrying about. There are other butterflies that aren't having good years. Well, think of the Carner Blue at Indiana Dunes. It's not there anymore.
And it just Indiana Dunes just became a national park. And you would think that now's the perfect time for the Carner Blue to show up for all those people going to this brand new national park. Which also has its own problems because apparently the number of people who have showed up at the park this year just went through the roof. And they're not sure if it's because it was designated a national park. You know, some people want to get that ticket stamped, so they've been to all of them, whatever. The other problem is it's on the way to everything. I mean, if you go out to the Olympic National Park in Washington State, it's really not that well attended because it's not on the way. It's stuck in a corner of the state of Washington, and it's in one of the most gorgeous parks in the world, and yet the population's low. You go to Indiana Dunes, well, it's at the southern edge of Lake Michigan where all the highways are, all the trains are, and anybody can get there.
And does that affect the butterfly populations there?
I mean, definitely could. Their habitat's pretty sensitive, but for the Carner Blue, I think climate change is the bigger issue.
And that's something we haven't even addressed. And a lot of these, it's not just habitat loss, it's not just pesticides. It is climate change, which of course we are also responsible for. And you're seeing the decline. So you haven't seen, is it elsewhere in this area, Alan, the Carner Blue, or is that where it was primarily seen?
It wasn't a huge population in Indiana. Doug, where's the closest Carner Blue?
The two biggish populations that are relatively near here are up by Fort McCoy in central Wisconsin and the Allerton State Game Area in western Michigan.
Yeah, but an issue with climate change is you're more likely to get this phenomenon called phenotypic or phenological mismatch, where, say, the caterpillars wake up and are hungry before their host plant has started to leaf out and green up, and the food just not available for them.
By the way, one of the articles that I found was from New Hampshire, and you guys will appreciate the headline, or actually the first paragraph. This year's proving to be a good one in New Hampshire, if a slightly puzzling one, for the most iconic of all butterfly species. And sorry, Carner Blue, but we mean the monarch butterfly. So apparently in New Hampshire, that's a big deal.
Yeah, there's a population of Carner Blues near Concord, New Hampshire. And there are sandy areas there with the lupin host plant. And so I'm really glad to hear that they are making that kind of a statement in the newspaper article.
Why?
Because even though they're saying, sorry, Carner Blue, they are acknowledging the Carner Blue there. So that's, people are aware of it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's just like this thuggery on the part of the monarch butterfly. Nobody talks about other butterflies.
Got a good PR agent.
Yeah, I guess so.
But the Carner Blue is endangered?
Yes, endangered at the federal level and has not been seen in Indiana at all since 2012.
Give me a couple more, Alan, that you think merit our consideration.
One that we've worked with is the regal fritillary butterfly, which is another kind of success story, or at least starting to have some success repopulating areas within the sort of east central Illinois and Indiana boundary area.
I think I've seen a ton of those in the spring, the last couple of seasons. Would I have seen that one? I know there are fritillaries in my backyard and in my area. Is it the regal fritillary, or am I thinking of other fritillaries?
Yeah, you're probably thinking of the Great Spangled Fritillaria unless you live sort of closer to the Kankakee area.
Okay, well, see, that's why I'm asking the scientists in the room. All right, and before we break, like 1 minute, just that's all I want to devote to this, raising monarchs. It's so controversial. You say anything at all, and then all the monarchs lovers, you got 60 seconds. All the monarch lovers come at you. Who wants to just dive in and make go? All right, Alan.
Real quick. It's a great educational experience. Go ahead and do it, but try and keep it to less than 10. That's a joint statement put out by the Xerces Society and other monarch researchers. And don't bring them inside to rear them because that could potentially break their migratory behavior.
And in the long run, isn't it better? Well, I don't know. Isn't it better to just leave them in nature and to their own devices? I hear that the survival rate is like 2% or something of all eggs laid. Is that too low?
That's fairly standard for most insects.
Yeah.
They have a reproductive strategy where they lay a gazillion eggs and only a few of them survive to adulthood.
So, don't raise more than 10. Certainly, don't participate in the places that breed them by the tens of thousands. That's just not healthy at all. All right, more insects when we come back. It's the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki.
So let's see. We've got Carol Freeman says, good morning. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Carol.
Got Robert Chesro. Good morning, Peggy and Mike. Love your show. David R. Perling's out in Chula Vista, California with all the Western monarch issues. And he said he's got butterfly weed, and it's attracting a lot of monarchs that are laying eggs in the garden, and so he's doing his part out there. Trying to see who else is watching and commenting here. Got
like I said, these are not your grandfather's conifers. If you've been to the Shedd Aquarium, the Lincoln Park Conservatory, or the Chicago Botanic Garden, you've seen some of these fantastic trees. Go to Rich's Foxwillow Pines for more information. Follow them on Facebook.
Dragonflies.
Sign up for the
Yes, we got to get to dragonflies and spiders, and then whatever else.
Bugs.
And then whatever else is out there.
Spiders and the fall invaders.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
You know, yeah, I think we need to explain why people don't notice spiders in April and they really notice them in September.
Wait, they're moving in.
They're moving in. They're probably just full grown and bigger now.
That's what I mean, is
Yeah.
that they get larger as the season. Well, it's like a praying mantid.
Thank you.
You know, you see one like this, and then later in the season, it's like this. They're terrifying. They're really cool, though. Yeah.
Well, you only notice the small spiders if you happen to someplace probably where the egg sac is, and you're seeing all the little ones wandering around, like it landed on your coat, which you threw on the chair.
Or a fun exercise is wear a headlamp out at night and look at all the little tiny jewels staring back at you in the lawns and bushes. Those are spider-eyed
Cool.
eyes.
Live
shining
simply,
out.
laugh more.
I love the sound of summer rain. I love the sunshine when skies are blue again. But soon the autumn wind will put a chill into my bones. I hate to see the summer go.
Ah, yes. We all do.
Fell in love.
So do the insects, especially the ones that are not going to overwinter.
Well, that's why they go in the house.
Welcome back to the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki. We're very pleased to have a couple of noted scientists in the studio from the Peggy Notebaert Nature Museum. They are Doug Taron and Allen Lawrance, and we're talking. Oh, by the way, who's singing that. That's our buddy Mark Dvorak from his latest CD, which is not. I think it's since 2014, but that's the latest CD, and it's a great song. He's got some great songs on there. So we talk monarchs. Good, we get that out of the way. All right, let's jump to spiders, because I'm afraid the spiders will get short shrift. Which, of course, spiders are not insects. They're arachnids. That's a different thing. 8 legs versus 6 legs is what you learn in grade school. Alan, you've been quoted in articles recently around this area about people freaking out over spiders at this time of year. Why do people freak out over spiders at this time of year?
Well, a lot of your spiders are full grown this time of year, and they're very big and visible, so you might notice them more often.
Mm-hmm.
Also, as it starts to cool out outside, some of them might try and wander inside your house if it's not properly sealed.
Yeah, but who's got a properly sealed house? Yeah, I've got a 130-year-old home, and there's no way I'm keeping critters out of my house. That's just and I don't mean just spiders and ants and that sort of thing. Pretty much, I would think anything could wander in at this point. Just open the back door. In our part of the country, I know it's not the same everywhere in the United States, but in the northern tier, we really don't have a lot of poisonous spiders here, do we?
No, there's only 2 venomous spiders in Illinois, the brown recluse and the black widow, both of which are pretty rare in the northern half of the state, so I wouldn't even concern myself with them.
So what is their latitude in terms of viability?
I mean, they can be found around here, but they're just going to be more common in the southern half of the state. But
right.
Even where they are present, they're not very aggressive, so I also still wouldn't worry about them.
Really? Okay. Because you hear all the horror stories, mostly these days, not so much about black widow anymore, but brown recluse. And,
Yeah, sometimes a building can get a brown recluse infestation, so there will be like isolated buildings with a high population of this specific spider. Somehow they get in and they like to live in little nooks and crannies. You don't see them walking around too often. You just have to be careful sometimes, if you reach into your shoes and you accidentally disturb one, that sort of thing. So that can freak people out, but they're really not prone to biting. You really have to kind of aggressively
it's
handle
kind of
it.
like bees, I guess. You got to really aggravate them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've noticed the spiders, and it happens at this time of year. And also, the foliage in my yard is way overgrown, so it makes it easier for them to string webs. And as I mentioned on the show the other week, usually I'm walking out to the garage and I get a face full of cobweb. I saw one on the way to the basement a couple of days ago, and boy, this guy or gal had set up this web that would snare any human being walking into my basement. And
it worked.
And you got to understand, my basement, you have to, because it's an old house, you have to go outside to go into the basement. And this was right across the stairway, and the spider was right in the middle, and had snagged something, and had wrapped it up in a little cocoon. And I just said, okay, I'm going to let you do whatever you're going to do here, dude.
I walked into a cobweb this morning, getting into my car. I think with the rain last night,
I
it
always
walked
love
in.
them, when they're just across the car door. But yeah, I've got one of the orb spiders across the front door.
Yeah.
And you'll just carefully take a couple of the strands off to get the spider to move so you can get out the door, and by the time you get back, it's fixed.
All right.
Yeah.
Peggy mentioned orb web spiders. What kind of different spiders are you going to see in this area?
Yeah, so there are just so many different types of spiders, but probably the most charismatic one that bothers people a lot, and they notice, is called the gray cross spider, which is an orb weaver. So it makes those big, strong webs in big empty areas. They love man-made structures. So they like high-rises, they like bridges, they like
Boats.
CTA stations, any sort of tunnel or underpass. They're everywhere. When I'm walking with my friends, I have to, remind myself to not point out every spider to people because I'll drive them insane.
Oh, no, you've got to. No, that's your job, Alan.
They're everywhere. No, but if you actually looked up at a bus stop, they are everywhere.
Yep.
However, they're, we're in a city that's on a coastline of this giant freshwater lake and a river, so there are a lot of bugs that live in water and around water. So if these spiders weren't also there, you'd have a lot more bugs flying around your face bothering you.
Well,
close and personal.
I'm at this point where I want that to happen. When you read about the windshield effect and the mass loss of insects, let's talk about that a little bit. Studies, the one I've read was about Germany, where in certain areas they lost 3/4 of the insect population, maybe 2/3, something like that, over a period of time. Doug, can you address that a little bit?
Well, there are a number of studies that have taken place in different places around the world using different methods that have shown large declines in a variety of insect species. Some of the studies are taxon specific. We've already talked about the ones that Alan and I were covering off on earlier that were specific to butterflies and dragonflies. Others are much more general. There's actually one from Puerto Rico that seems to be correlating insect declines with songbird declines, which is
And lizards.
And lizards. That's right. And so it's.
I thought I read one about Costa Rica too, where huge areas that used to be completely controlled, dominated by insects, are almost barren to some degree.
I know that when I do things like black lighting for moths in certain places in the tropics, the sheet does not get nearly as covered with insects as it would many years ago. Now, I don't know how general that is.
So for our listeners, what is black lighting?
Black lighting is one way that you collect moths at night. You hang a big sheet up and you put a light in front of it. Originally it was black lights. People still use them, but they now use the high-intensity halogen lights as well. And the moths and beetles are attracted to the light, and they come and land on the sheet. And it's a great way to observe a great diversity of insects. You can do it here in Chicago. It's a lot of fun, actually.
And the loss of insects to me, and I mentioned this earlier, alluded to it earlier, there's got to be a correlation somehow with the bird loss, because insects are a huge food source for birds. And I think if we're losing that many insects, that's not a good sign. That does not indicate the health of our planet.
There's a really good article from many years ago that E.O. Wilson wrote called "The Little Things That Run the World." And it talks about all of the functions that insects play. And, if you think of something biological that's going on, some insect somewhere is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they provide so many ecological roles and ecological services that a large-scale loss of insects is certainly something that one should be concerned about.
And are you, let me ask each of you, I mean, is this something that keeps you awake at night? Or do you just move on and you just do your science?
Both to a degree. I mean, it keeps me awake, and I move on and keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be really conflicting, because we'll look at our butterfly monitoring data, say, oh, look, there's a really cool trend. This actually shows a story. Let's write this up. But it's not a good story. So it's sad at the same time. It's cool to see that our methods work, but then it's really sad to see what the story is.
Before we get too utterly depressed here about all of this,
something good, yeah.
Butterflies have had an incredibly good end of the season this year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go out right now on a nice day, there are lots of butterflies everywhere.
Yeah.
It's late enough in the season that the species diversity has fallen off a lot for the year, but you're seeing a lot of individuals. It's a time people are going to be seeing a lot of stuff in their butterfly gardens.
What are you seeing? We're seeing monarchs, obviously, because even though the mass of them have gone south, there's still plenty floating around up here, and every time they land in my yard, they say, okay, get that nectar and hit the road, dude. You better start heading south. But I'm seeing a lot of cabbage butterflies, and I'm seeing... I see other butterflies as well. What are you seeing?
Painted ladies, a lot of
yeah.
those.
A lot of painted ladies, buckeyes. There's a really little bright orange one called the fiery skipper that's having an extremely good year.
I saw some the other day.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was, and now I do.
Yeah, they're like bright yellow with little black dots on them. I've been seeing red admirals. So again, it's mostly common species, but very high abundance at the moment. And the whole end of the summer has been very strong for butterfly abundance.
And we see these explosions from time to time of populations. I believe there was one in California either this year or the previous year of painted ladies, was it?
This spring, I happened to be in California during the painted lady. It was amazing. And you'd be driving, and all of a sudden you'd be in this butterfly blizzard. And that was really cool. I had a little bit of a curmudgeonly response to it, though, because there were so many painted ladies. I wanted to look at other stuff, and it made it hard to find the other stuff because they were getting lost in all the painted
get out of the
ladies.
way.
Yeah.
Doug, all I got to say to you...
Don't be a jerk.
Okay. But I think a scientist being in the middle of this, I read about it, I said, yeah, I want to be there. I wanted to be there with the flower explosion they had after all the rain.
That was so cool.
Yeah, it really was.
Did that help? Did it lead to it?
I think that they both derive from the same thing, and that is it was a very, very wet winter in the desert Southwest, and that produced the big super bloom, which was also amazing, and it let the painted ladies really have a good winter.
All right. We're going to get to dragonflies. Let me take care of some business here, and then we're going to do a short break, and then we are going to get to dragonflies. But first, got a minute for your trees. Bartlett tree experts know that there are many reasons for pruning your trees. If you have ornamental trees, pruning dead and dying branches for tree health and safety is always important. Pruning can also reduce wind resistance and subsequent storm damage. It can improve shape or eliminate interference with structures. It can increase the amount of light for grass or ground cover under a tree. It can improve your view, but let's not get carried away with that, folks. It gives young trees a strong framework for future growth. Bartlett also provides fruit tree pruning, if you haven't read Orin Martin's book, and shrub pruning, but that's a very different animal from shrub shearing. There's a lot they can do, but the first step is to contact an arborist representative because every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com. We will be back with more insects.
Don't stop at harvest. Now is the critical time to set up for next season. And the products to use are from Tiny Biologicals. Whether you're working 500 square feet in your backyard or a 1,000-acre farm, the soil needs are the
So,
same. Feed those
dragonflies
plants
and
the
then
nutrients
whatever
to keep
else
your soil ready
you
for
think
spring.
is
Go to
important for folks to know about as we head into
The soil can make
the
compost
winter,
from field debris,
fall
so
and
use
winter,
biodigester as
about
well. Tiny
critters.
products from
That's a
Blazing
term we
Star.
could use,
Go to
just
Blazing
critters.
Dash
But the problem is then
If you want to bring in your centipedes and millipedes.
That's right. The problem is people think mammals too, though, when you say critters. But I think critters works pretty well.
Critters. Skeet's Critter Carnival.
Right.
So when Skeet comes in from Bartlett, MD Skeet, one of their arborists, he tends to bring his Critter Carnival with him.
That's pretty cool.
Which last year was, we had bagworm races going across.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Thank you.
There's a, from I see Marengo, Illinois, there's the Running of the Bears Festival, where you race woolly bears.
Oh, that's cool.
The award-winning all-electric SUV. But you need to get your tickets soon because only 2,500 will be sold. So how do you win? Go to store.illinoissolar.
I heard it the other day, and I said, I'm going to play that on the show.
Yeah, Tom's Diner. I would not have come up with that without.
Me neither.
Or the 4-pack for $300. All raffle
Cough away from the mic.
All right.
That was funny. You started reading the spot. We all started drinking our coffee.
That's hilarious. All right, time for a break.
The winner will be drawn at the ISEA member meeting on December 5th, 2019. Anyone in the continental U.S. is eligible to win, and you don't even need to be present at the drawing to claim your prize. So get your tickets, the rules, and all the other small print details at illinoissolar.org.
Joey says, don't clean the garden up. Leave
Listen to
dead
the Mike
plants so
Novak
bugs have a
Show
place to
Peggy
live.
Malecki
Every Sunday morning from 9 to 11 a.m.
On Smart Talk.
WCGO, AM and FM. Every time I hear this song now, I think of my days at Gargantua Radio, also known as WGN, when I used to do overnights. And at 4 a.m. every day I would play this song and do news headlines. So now every time I hear this song, I think, oh, it must be 4 a.m. All right, let's do some news headlines. Welcome back to the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki. Very pleased to have in studio a couple of foremost entomologists in the country. And Doug Taron and Allen Lawrance work at the Peggy Notebaert Nature Museum, which is, I always... Let me get this right, because I always misspeak if I don't read it. Come on, Michael, where it is? There it is. The Chicago Academy of Sciences. Nobody uses that anymore, do they? Or do they? You're not.
We still get. our official name is the Chicago Academy of Sciences and it's Peggy Notebaert Nature Museum, but that's kind of a mouthful.
It really is. So you could say either, and it means
Or the museum
same thing.
within the Chicago Academy of Sciences.
All right, so we said we would get to dragonflies because I know that's a passion of yours, Doug's, and I don't know, maybe I read this someplace, but every time I see a dragonfly, I think it brings good luck. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but tell us about dragonflies this year, Doug.
Well, dragonflies at the moment are the other insect that is undergoing a very large migration right now. And we're seeing it here in Chicago. You can go outside. You see it more in the morning and later in the afternoon, and you'll see large swarms of dragonflies. These are green darner dragonflies. And when you see the swarm, generally what's happening there is that a migrating group has kind of taken a break and they're in a feeding swarm. And you'll see them kind of going in every which way direction. And, it's a good migration this year. I have seen bigger, but apparently just east of here into Ohio and Pennsylvania, there's an absolutely enormous dragonfly migration going on at the moment to the point that they're picking it up on weather radar, which is really cool.
Peggy sent me the articles. I don't know if you have those up there, Peggy.
I've got one of them up was National Weather Service's Cleveland office showed radar images of the insects creating storm cloud-like shapes over Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania last week. And there's also some from North Carolina and West Virginia now that have come up on radar.
That's a lot of dragonflies, isn't it?
It is, and this is not the first time that insect swarms have been detected on weather radar. I first became aware of this, 6 or 7 years ago. You would hear in Wisconsin, people would be catching the mayfly hatches on the Mississippi River in weather radar. Then later, there was a big painted lady event in Colorado that was caught on weather radar. And last year, they even in Oklahoma detected that other migrating insect. They were detecting
that orange and black one.
Yeah, they were detecting monarchs on weather radar. No, it'll be interesting.
Doug, this is a monarch-free zone right now.
So, but it's just so cool that they could see them.
I know.
So how large are the green darners?
The green darners are they are a big dragonfly. They're probably about 4 inches long.
So they're the big ones that you see flying around by the lakefront.
Yeah, and they're actually green and blue. You can't really see the colors very well unless they land, which they don't do all that often, but they're very, very pretty dragonflies. And it's really impressive to be standing surrounded by one of these big feeding swarms where you've just got thousands of dragonflies swirling around you.
And look up, they can fly really high.
Yeah.
It was interesting. How high can a dragonfly go, and how high can your average butterfly go? Is it a big difference? Or is that something that scientists even measure?
Well, I mean, it's not anything that I'm aware of being measured in a systematic way. With butterflies, what I can tell you is that small aircraft pilots have seen migrating monarchs at like 5,000 to 6,000 feet.
Wow.
The green darner dragonflies that are migrating right now are going down to the Gulf Coast, both of the U.S. and Mexico. And particularly as they start getting further south, they will start co-migrating with raptors. And they're an important food source for migrating raptors. So if you think of how high, if you're looking at migrating hawks, how high the hawks are flying, they're way up there. The dragonflies are not visible with the naked eye from the ground at that elevation, but they're there. At that elevation flying, so they get way up there.
I'm seeing a scientific paper here, if comparing the heights that various insects can.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We know there are insects that get really high. There are a number of moths and other types of insects that just fly up into jet streams that get blown around, essentially.
Well, yeah, and then they end up in Australia and England and wherever around the world. I mean, they're a monarch, of course. Do you think that's how monarchs got to other parts of the world?
I think that was people mostly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're probably right. What do I? People, we drag everything across the planet. Well, we just have a few minutes left here, and I actually want to call attention to an email we got from Joey Baird, who said, and Peggy mentioned it during the break, that if folks want to have more insects around, they might consider leaving the litter on the ground in their yards. And you guys are both nodding.
The yard litter, not the garbage litter.
Absolutely. A large number, maybe most insects that overwinter do it down in the leaf litter. So if you rake all your leaves, you're removing habitat, and there's no place for them to go. So a really great thing you can do is leave your leaves on the ground, as many as you can, or mulch them in place.
If you got a lawn, I understand that, but even lawns are a lot tougher than you think, unless they get completely matted down. In which case, as you say, you can chop them up, you mow them, and then leave them on the ground, and they break up. And then what I do is I rake the leaves off my tiny lawn into my garden, because I know there's leaf litter. And I'll tell you the truth, I get as much branch litter as I can too. It's not just leaf litter. I put branch litter out there so that insects have habitat.
Get your neat neighbor's leaves too.
Yeah, you don't need to neaten everything up. Leave your brush piles, leave some long grasses. That's really good habitat.
Yeah, one of the groups of insects that really likes that sort of treatment of a yard are fireflies.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's interesting because earlier in the year, somebody wrote about fireflies, and I said, "Oh, I see a lot of fireflies in my yard. I leave my leaf litter down," and they kind of poo-pooed it and said, "You don't know why they're there, really." And I thought, "Yeah, you're right. I don't." So I like to think that maybe I'm doing some good, and in the big picture, probably yes, but you really don't know for sure if you get a bunch of fireflies in your yard whether it has anything to do with you leaving your leaf litter down. Does it?
Well, I think one of the things that would argue in favor of leaf litter helping fireflies is what the juvenile fireflies eat are like roly-polies and little snails and that sort of thing, and all of those are really going to benefit from leaving the leaf litter down. They eat it, it keeps the soil level moist, which they like. So if you have more of that, you're potentially going to have more firefly prey.
Well, we got like a minute and a half. What are we going to do about jumping worms, dudes? I know. It just seems sad that I don't think they're all over my yard. They're here. They're in Chicago, and they're in my backyard. I think maybe I brought them in. I don't know.
Well, I think worms in general in this part of the world are a problem. Non-jumping earthworms are not native to this part of the world, and they've caused a lot of changes in the leaf litter layer of woodlands. And what are we going to do with them? I don't have the first clue.
And that's kind of that's the conclusion I've come to, is that I don't think we know what to do.
And there's
about
too many
this.
of them to try to remove a
And
few
people
of them.
say, well, how do I keep them out of my yard? And I tell people, you're not. They're going to end up in your yard because the eggs overwinter, even though the worms don't in this climate. And then in southern climates, the worms will probably survive, and it's just going to get worse and worse. Well, I'm sorry. The good news, the monarchs are doing great, right? and some others, and leave leaf litter in your yard to help the insects. Gosh, it's been great having you guys here. Doug Taron and Allen Lawrance from Peggy Notebaert Nature Museum. We're going to have you back, you know that. And go Bugs. We'll be back. The Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki.
Welcome to the second hour of the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki. This hour is brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com. Here they are again, Peggy Malecki and Mike Novak.
All I need is good food to eat and make me healthy, wealthy, wide awake. Lettuce, tomatoes, root and bacon. What about those sweet potatoes? All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good
Welcome
tools
back
make
to the
me
Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki.
Good morning. Hello.
It's a fine Sunday.
It stopped raining.
I have no idea, did it?
I think so.
Yeah. I had about an inch of rain in my rain gauge this morning, but that's probably spread over a couple of days. But did you?
I did not check this morning.
Oh, okay.
But there were large puddles in the driveway.
Because you don't want to. You've had so much rain.
There was large puddles in the driveway and soggy spots in the backyard already.
Today is the final day of the Windy City 2019 Windy City Coop Tour and Eco Yard Coop. What's the full name?
I'm looking for it.
I did that the other day.
And Eco Yard Tour.
Right. Windy City Coop and Eco Yard Tour. Is that it?
I believe so.
Okay. So
It's at 22 locations around Chicago where you can go see backyard chickens and other birds and livestock.
And the website for that is
if you type in Chicagoland chicken enthusiasts, it will take you to the site. It's a much longer sites.google.com, but
I thought it was a simple one you told me last week. It was like chickens.com or something. Or
that's not what I'm getting
chickens.
off of this now.
Ah. Well, I know the Chicagoland Chicken Enthusiasts.
Yes, and that's the site I'm on.
You know, and you can go to the Facebook page or their site, and all the information there.
10 to 1 and a short break, and 1 to 4, and the online map is there. It's a
10 to 1.
And 1 to 4.
We get some eggs, and then we move on.
Yep, stop for an omelet.
And wow, wish I had a dinger here. I would. Oh no. Actually, we know what the proper response to that is.
What a jerk move.
Okay, there we go. But something happened on Friday that throws the whole eco tour and the chicken coop tour into a new light. And that is Alderman Lopez in the city of Chicago.
Raymond Lopez, 15th District?
The 15th Ward.
Ward, Ward.
And announced on Friday that he had proposed a new ordinance that would, among other things, ban roosters. And he's going to basically change the urban ag rules in Chicago. And it's being submitted it's submitted to the Committee on License and Consumer Protection. Alderman Napolitano is also a sponsor, apparently, of this ordinance, and Napolitano is on that committee, though Lopez is not. And I read and there was an article in Block Club about that. And the funny part was Lopez, so I'm not trying to, cram this down anybody's throat, but we'd like to have this figured out by October. I'm like, that's like a week away, okay? So it says in the Black Club, roosters would be banned on other farm animals like goats and pigs, more tightly regulated in Chicago under a newly proposed ordinance.
That's roosters and not chickens.
Roosters, right. Roosters. Because a lot of people get tense when there's a rooster in the neighborhood. Now, let me start by saying perhaps quantifying some of these quantifying how to raise livestock in the city is not a bad thing. Kind of depends what you're looking at. The whole rooster issue is very interesting. I've had roosters in my neighborhood, and they've never bothered me one whit. Yet other people claim that they're just a nuisance, and apparently folks have been setting them free in the city and other animals, which causes problems, obviously. The thing that's weird about the alderman's proposal is that he doesn't seem to have come to the people who know what they're doing, like Advocates for Urban Agriculture and the Chicago Food Policy Committee and Angelic Organics Learning Center and Illinois Environmental Council. It just seems to have sprung whole cloth out of somewhere. So and behind the scenes, in the last few days, apparently the urban ag community has been in an uproar about this. Now, it's okay because often ordinances don't even get out of committee. But you can look at this positively and say this is an opportunity to talk. Because, maybe there need to be some more rules about this to make it clarify.
And more education.
And more education about it. One of the problems with roosters is that, like schools, they will hatch chicks, not realizing some of them are going to become roosters. What do you do with those roosters then? Are you discarding them? So you're going to have to drag something like that perhaps into this. At any rate, the point is that Alderman Lopez is going to be on Chicago Tonight on Tuesday with Laura Calvert, the executive director of Advocates for Urban Agriculture. And so I encourage people to watch that to see what's going on. I chatted with her the other day. I chatted with Martha Boyd about this. And the whole idea is it's like, let's sit down and talk. Let's figure this out. Doing things by fiat never works. So part of the problem I have is that the alderman didn't say, hey, I'd like to sit down and talk with you guys. He just said, I've proposed this ordinance.
It works in other communities, so it's going to work here.
Well, and he also says, this is not a farm, this is a city. Well, those kind of statements are not helpful.
Education needed.
So Chicago tonight on Tuesday, Laura Calvert from Advocates for Urban Agriculture and Alderman Raymond Lopez from the 15th Ward. It should be an interesting conversation. And next week we're going to have Laura on the show to talk about this. I'm trying to get Martha Boyd as well. All right, when we come back, organic fruit trees. You don't want to miss this conversation. We'll be right back.
When it comes to caring for your trees, you want the best science and the best arborists. You get exactly that with Bartlett Tree Experts. For 3 generations, training and education have been central to the work
Great.
of
All
this
right.
family-owned company.
There he is.
Can I say hi?
Hi, Orin.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having me on.
What a pleasure. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. I know it's early there. Of course, not for you, because you're the guy that's out at sunrise. With my acting background, I'm the guy there that's out at sunrise, but only because he's been up all night.
You're just coming back.
In this profession, we have a phrase that goes, "We are servants of the season in the morning's early light."
Aha.
Visit their website at restorethenorthshore.com or give them a call at 847-998-1687. That's restorethenorthshore.com or give them a call at 847-998-1687.
I see you have one of the prints behind you on the wall.
Yes, as I call him, my wife Stephanie's evocative princess.
Oh.
If I move my head, you can see a hummingbird in an apple tree in bloom. There you go.
Now, is the hummingbird in bloom or the apple tree? That's the question.
Hummingbird is waiting, sitting on figs, no doubt.
How do you pronounce your daughter's name?
Manjula.
Manjula. Thank you. I would never have gotten that right.
All right.
Businesses and organizations offering green exhibits, energy-saving ideas, and holiday gift tips. Taste local food, go on the Sustainable Artist Walk, and tour the beautiful new MCC greenhouse and high tunnels. The Green Living Expo
Is that the hummingbird in Getting Started?
And I will be there. Come and join us.
Yes,
at
you're
McHenry
correct.
County College, Saturday, November 2nd from 10 a.m.
Yeah.
to 3 p.m. Go to mchenry.edu/greenexpo.
Oh, they're beautiful, all the
MCC
artwork.
Office of Sustainability at 815-479-7765.
Well, blessed are the old ones who know the magic of this earth, and all those who've shared her simple pleasures, and who know what these gifts are worth. And say a prayer for the young ones who may never understand that beneath all of the concrete and all the buildings lies some of the world's most fertile land. And all these highways ain't no kind of substitute for the orchards and the fields and those silicon chips. They ain't like trees of fruit. Now they don't bloom in the springtime. Bring their fruit into the fall. Hey, Ruby and Rosie, tell me about it all, yeah. Ruby and Rosie, they tell me about it all.
Welcome back to the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki. We're very pleased to have Orin Martin on the show. And Orin, you recognize that song, don't you?
A fellow named Keith Graninger, local folkie. We had a big book launch for this book the other night, 250 people in a historic barn on campus at UCSC. And we had Keith there. I read a piece that's in the book. It was inspired by that very song called Take Back the Valley, or the Valley of the Heart's Delight. It's lamenting the loss of what was called the Valley of the Heart's Delight, the major fruit-producing valley, now the Silicon Valley. And so that's a beautiful tie-in, Mike. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. You had a lot of musical references in your book, which is called Fruit Trees for Every Garden, written by Orin Martin and Manjula Martin, who is your daughter. As I mentioned on my blog, when you get a foreword by Alice Waters, you expect something special, and it is. It's a very special book. And it is about growing fruit trees organically. And as I mentioned in my blog, to some people, that's an oxymoron. And especially, I think, in the Midwest. I could be wrong about that, but you've been doing it for 40 years, and you started out at the Alan Chadwick Gardens at the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Farming Systems at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And you've got 3 acres there, and you manage 600, folks, listen to that, 600 fruit trees. There's a lot of people trying to get one to grow properly. How do you manage 600 fruit trees?
Well, I move real quick.
Where's our dinger when we need it?
These are, I might add, dwarf trees, generally under 10 feet, often under 8 feet. We also have a 30-acre farm elsewhere on campus where we grow more standard orchards, trees that are 12, 15, 18 feet tall. And it doesn't really matter if you have 1, 10, 100, or 1,000 trees, though. What you do and when you do it and how you do it is about the same. The principles and practices are the same, regardless of scale.
I hardly know where to start, but what I will tell people is, I know where I want to start, with the artwork. With your wife Stephanie.
Good choice.
And it's beautiful. It is just beautiful. Your wife did, and I don't even know how to spell it because is it intaglio? Is that how you pronounce that?
It's Italian, yeah. I threw me for a loop too. Intaglio is how it's pronounced.
Intaglio etchings. They're color etchings, and they're just fabulous. I actually have one on my blog. You go to mikenovak.net, and you can see it. And they grace the book at all the important points where you start chapters. And they're fantastic. My only complaint is that it should have been on the cover. We should have had one on the cover.
Well, there's a couple on the back cover.
Well, I know, and that's good, so that people can just pick those up.
And I might add, that was my argument with the 10-speed press as well, but didn't win.
Can
I say something about her evocative prints, as I call them? Which
sure.
Is, this is an age-old process of printmaking, goes back to the Renaissance times, and it is a demanding, but she says gratifying experience to carry forward this centuries-old tradition. It is very difficult, and sometimes I wonder, how can you have a print? How can you have an edition? How the heck could you have a portfolio? And yet, look, there are 10 lovely etchings in this book. She also, Stephanie, my wife, also did the line drawings in the book, which I think the visuals of this book really augment the content-dense stuff.
They do. It's you've got wonderful photographs, but the prints are worth the price of admission. So if there's a reason, if there's a reason to pick up the book, it's that alone. But that said,
well, and the illustrations, as he said, are
right.
Great.
Well, and the illustrations include the how-to illustrations that you have in there, because as I mentioned in an email to you, Orin, there are pruning is I call it part art, part science, part nightmare for the average gardener. And that's not even taking into account fruit trees. That's just for ornamental trees. And with fruit trees, you lay it out step by step with really nice drawings. And I predict that there are people who buy fruit trees and get this book, and they're going to take it out to the garden, and they're going to be standing there looking at the book, looking at the tree, looking at the book, looking at the tree, and then tentatively making a little cut, then looking back at the book. And
going, did I do that right?
Right. And this book is going to get very dirty, but that's kind of what you want, don't you?
That is the intent, yes. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think, there's studies that show that trees in the environment have a calming effect on people, but maybe not so much the backyard gardener come pruning time. It can be overwhelming, intimidating. But and no doubt fruit tree physiology is complex, but it's actually quite logical, linear, methodical. So this book tries to lay out the step-by-step approach, what you do and what the expected responses are. And in general, the book is about the hows, the craft, the skill-based stuff, but it's also about the whys, a little bit of the science in bite-sized, digestible portions behind the how. So the fact, for instance, if you cut, it seems oxymoronic. If you cut back a branch, it stimulates it to grow more from winter pruning.
Right.
And a little bit about the how. Why is that true?
Well, you've got like you said, a little bit of each, but I think that you could use this book. A starting gardener could use this as a primer on organic gardening and not go wrong.
You're right, because I think the first impulse people have come planting season is grab a tree, grab a spade, dig a hole, stick the tree in the ground, and in reality, the last thing you do is plant the darn tree. There's a whole lot of the run-up to planting a tree is critically important. There's some planning, but it also is about, and is enumerated in the book through tutorials, what I call the 3 C's. Cultivation, which is just a fancy word for digging or plowing. Cultivation, compost, and cover crops. These are the 3 drivers of any organic system. So there's tutorials in how to start a compost pile, how to dig a French intensive raised bed, how to sow and manage and turn in cover crops as green manures. And speaks a little bit more to also the biodiversity you're trying to create in your yard, and that can indeed help you with pest issues. Won't solve them all, but can help you. So it's looking at, the tree and its minutiae, but also the setting that the tree is in, the soil, the yard, and beyond.
Well, yeah, you lay that out too. You say, okay, you got a hill. What direction is the hill pointing in? And that's going to change what kind of tree you put there. The soil, obviously, you have to pay attention to. There's just all kinds of considerations before you even put the tree in the ground.
That's right, and let's pause here and pay homage to soil in that soil is the portal to growing, good soil the portal to good growing. I think it's just probably the most make or break thing. So you need to know how to evaluate your soil. This book will help you with both a quantitative approach, just taking a soil sample, sending it to a lab, and a qualitative approach. There are a lot of things you can know about your soil simply by looking at it and running it through your hands and such. But it's just critically important to have good soil. If you don't, then the run-up to planting trees is about improving your soil through good digging techniques, as outlined in the book, through the French intensive raised bed, compost, 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 and cover crops turned in as green manures.
You call this the biodynamic French intensive, or as you write in the book, or French intensive, or raised bed gardening, or deep bed system, or Y bed system, or Chinese intensive. It's a little intimidating, but I think the point is what you just said now, which is compost, 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 but also preparing that soil and cover crops. And I think cover crops, I think people get the idea of compost, not as many people get the idea of cover crops.
You're totally right. It's just age old and something that you can do to kind of harness biology to help you. So the idea is in this climate, in the fall, winter, we overwinter our cover crops in most areas, say, Chicago, Wisconsin, etc., northern Illinois. You would sow cover crops in and around the trees towards the end of summer. They would grow until they had a killing frost, and then provide a thatch like that.
Well, technically,
you can use grasses and legumes to really improve your soil.
Yeah.
Legumes, members of the pea family, are able to give you free nitrogen. They can fix nitrogen, and free stuff is good, and nitrogen is the nutrient most needed and the most expensive. So again, free stuff is good.
I was going to say, we are at technically today, the end of summer.
Yeah. Yep. How about that?
So if somebody were to do a cover crop on the last day of summer or the first day of autumn, I would think there might be still time to get some benefits from that, don't you? Or
sure, you can. You can grow just grasses, any of the annual cereals. Oats are easy. Rye is good. Barley as well. And you can grow any number of legumes in tandem with the grasses. Having a grass legume mix is a little better overall. Vetches are fairly hardy. Clovers, etc. You sow them now, they grow, and then once you're killing frost, they'll die. But again, the thatch that they provide from the dead foliage will be a mulch for you over winter. And some, like vetch, will even spring up again and grow a little bit in the in the spring, and then you turn them in again.
Right, and you've just fertilized your lawn, as you said, with the cost of seed.
Oops.
What? You okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I thought we froze here.
Oh,
It
okay.
says the internet connection is unstable, but proceed.
Yeah.
Well,
just keep talking.
You know what, Orin, I'm unstable, and it doesn't bother anybody here. So cover crops are great, man. There's just so much that you bring out, but one of the things I have to address, and don't let me get away from and I won't remember the type. I'll get to it. Let's start with double digging. I am a guy who thought that the idea of double digging died decades ago.
I read that and I was picturing alarm bells going off in your head.
But the way you describe it, it makes sense because you're not just taking the soil from 2 feet down and putting it on top, which was I think was the old double digging. You're saying get rid of some of that, incorporate some compost into that, make it better so that the tree has a chance to send deeper roots, even though, as we know, roots grow out, not down from trees. So, and I think this is all, excuse me for going on here, but the point is it's all in the service of fruit trees, and the thing you make really clear, and I think folks need to understand, and I wrote about it on the blog, is that fruit trees are not ornamental trees. They're fruit trees. They have different needs, and your goal is to jumpstart that tree the second you get it in the ground so you can get it producing within 3 or 4 years.
That's true. But let's pause on the soil and digging a little bit.
Okay.
First of all, you need to evaluate your soil. You may or may not have good soil. The techniques in the book, particularly around French intensive raised bed double digging, are for people who have poor soil. And it's a really good way to rapidly jumpstart your soil and get it moving along in the direction of fertility. There's a lot of good things about working the soil, digging, plowing, etc. And there are, as we know, increasingly some negative things. So you have to sort of exercise your horticultural sensibilities and decide how much of this digging do you need to do. But to your thing about roots, it's very true of fruit trees. They actually have often wider than deeper roots. In fact, most of the effective feeding roots are in the top 1, maybe 2 foot of the soil. And this is irrespective of whether it's a dwarf or a full-size tree. But the roots are not symmetrical, but they are radial. They go out wide.
And that's the way pretty much with all trees, and I think it's wise for people to understand that. You know, even when you have an ornamental tree, arborists and we have Bartlett Tree Experts is the sponsor of our show, and they advise make the mulch ring as large as you can stand it, basically, because the roots go out to the drip line and beyond.
That's true, very true, and the more active feeding roots are right at that drip line around the periphery of the tree. Let me put in a plug here for what is technically called ramial wood chips, or just plain old wood chips. We've been using them for 30 plus years as a mulch on our fruit trees, and as such, once we initially prepare and plant the tree, the first few years use a little cover compost, we can just pretty much mulch the trees 3 or 4 inches spring and fall, sow a cover crop into it, knock that down, and mulch it over again. Wood chips as a mulch are phenomenal in fruit tree systems, and there's now supporting research to show that. And usually in most areas you can get wood chips cheap or free.
And as you mentioned, ramial wood chips, which are the smaller branches, which you like, and that seems to make a lot of sense to me, that, yeah, you can incorporate those in the soil. They're going to break down a little faster.
That's correct.
All right. We need to take a short break here. That's Orin Martin. He is co-author, he wrote with his daughter Manjula Martin, Fruit Trees for Every Garden. We will be right back.
Almost 2,000 gallons of water to produce one.
Okay, so we are live on Facebook, just not live on the radio right now for the next 2 minutes.
So don't swear while you're on. Okay.
I'll be on my best behavior.
What's the weather like there today?
Meat
Oh, it's going to be in the upper, for us, we're out on the coast. It's a little warm for us, I know. 78, 81 degrees like that, and low relative humidity. I heard from your earlier report you're getting rain there. We actually have a chance of rain next weekend, but here it would be welcome, of course, because of our dry Mediterranean climate and the fear of fire.
Yeah, yeah. Although I'm knocking on marble here on my countertop that there haven't been a lot of headlines about that this year.
No, we've been a few small fires, relatively speaking, but September and October are typically the months. Some of the biggest fires, in fact, have been in October. So, yeah, let's knock on marble, wood, ground, mulch, whatever.
Do you come to Chicago ever?
Came through a few times in my younger years when I was hitchhiking and driving across the country, but I'm a big baseball fan. I'm from Boston, so along with Fenway, Wrigley ranks right up there. Maybe I should drop by sometime, although the Cubs are kind of doing this.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Whatever. Well, at least until 2004, I had to introduce myself as a long suffering Red Sox fan. Now I don't, and you folks no longer have to.
All right, coming back soon.
Stand by.
Schools and clinics in Bolivia. Go to richesfoxwillowpines.com for more information. Follow them on Facebook and sign up for the e-newsletter. That's richesfoxwillowpines.com.
Mike's
Such is the way of the world, you can never know just where to put all your faith and how will it grow.
Welcome back to the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki. I had to choose another song that you mentioned in your book. See, one of the things that Orin Martin has done with his book, Fruit Trees for Every Garden, you've revealed a little bit of yourself, your musical choices and your sports, your love of sports. You use those metaphors. That is Eddie Vedder singing their song called Rise. Why is that important to you?
Well, Eddie Vedder, a man who made playing the ukulele cool, feat, and two strong advocate for social justice and the environment. And in that song Rise, he talks near the end about throwing down your ace in the hole, and as I put it, exerting love and care on a sometimes unseemly world here. So let's go to fruit trees. Please plant fruit trees. They provide shade, cover, fruit, and maybe throw a little shade on climate change. But also, as you see, and as you said, Mike, rock and roll can inform your education.
You and I are contemporaries, so we've got a lot of the same background, I'm sure. You mentioned the band in there and some other groups. I just don't have time to play them all, but I thought I'd get a couple of well, at least one of the more obscure ones. The fellow Keith, who played Greninger. Honest to goodness, I went to YouTube and found it, and there was like 257 views of that, and I thought, that guy deserves more.
He does. He's a man who has a reverence for nature and an empathy for people, as you can tell from his lyrics, and plays bluesy stuff with a really nice, soulful sound, and he's a favorite in our household and in this area.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Jackson Browne with a little edge, basically.
A little edge and a little more social justice concern, yeah. A little ground, a little edge, yeah. But, I like Jackson, too.
Anyway, the book, again, is called Fruit Trees for Every Garden. It is an organic approach to growing apples, pears, peaches, plums, citrus, and more. And I think we should make that clear. You spend a lot of time talking about pomes, P-O-M-E-S, which are fruits like apples. But you cover a wide range, pretty much everything. It made me wonder why you didn't go into blueberries and raspberries and that sort of thing. But looking at the length of the book as it is, I thought, yeah, that would probably make your head explode, wouldn't it?
the readers. I was down for a 700-800 page tome, but not so much the publishers. So I actually just wanted to concentrate on pome fruits, apples, pears, and quinces, and stone fruits, anything with a pit in the center, plums, peaches, cherries, and the like. And they asked me to add the citrus, pomegranate, figs, persimmons, etc. So I did.
They're kind of cool. It's interesting to read about them, and I'm glad you did throw that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my apprentices have accused me of never getting past A in the fruit tree catalog. It's not totally true. But the thing of it is, here on the Central Coast of California, Santa Cruz County, for instance, is the second smallest county in the state, but until the 80s used to be the second leading apple producing region. So apples grow real well here. So I have concentrated on those.
Yeah, you don't think about that. When I think apples, I think Washington State, I think Michigan.
Yeah. Well, certainly both those states. And actually, let's put in a plug for the PRI apples, Purdue Rugger, Illinois. The collaborative breeding program been going on since past around the Second World War. Purdue Ruggers in Illinois. Originally, they were called low spray or no spray apples, and they developed some really good varieties. They did the cutesy thing of usually putting the letters P, R, and I, Purdue Ruggers in Illinois, consecutively in the varietal name. So you have Prima, Pristine, Priscilla, Williams Pride, and they are indeed low and no spray apples. And particularly, you draw a line from Duluth to Dallas eastward, you're going to have more pest and disease issues. So anything you can do in planting disease-resistant varieties is going to help you out.
Yeah, you do mention that in the book, and so we're in that part of the country here, unlike you, where we have more of those pests and diseases because it's a little more humid, more moist than you guys get. But then you have to deal with water issues. You have to, it's a very dry part of the country.
We have a semi-arid climate, and as we move forward, moving more towards arid. So yeah, that's an issue. We, ironically, and you're going to laugh at this, we have an issue with not having enough winter chill sometimes for our deciduous fruits. That's not a problem in Chicago, Wisconsin, etc.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think folks have probably never heard of that they're going to learn about if they read this book is something called chill hours. And it's not, kicking back with a glass of wine or a beer. It is something else. Tell us about chill hours and fruit trees.
Yeah, chill hours would be defined as the number of hours in an area that you get where the temperatures are below 45 degrees. You just log them in cumulatively. All areas around the country have been logged in, so you can find out from your ag extension people what are your expected chill hours. Similarly, all fruit tree varieties have been tested for their chill hours. So you're going to probably get in excess of 1,000, 1,400, maybe you get up in Wisconsin and Michigan approaching 2,000 chill hours. We're lucky to get 500 to 700 out here. The point being that you need to match up the variety of, say, apple you want to plant and your chill hours. And there are high chill, moderate chill, and low chill varieties. You live in a high chill, your audience lives in a high chill area, and you ought to plant high chill hours. And this is just, once a tree goes dormant, it needs these amount of chill hours to bust out of dormancy in a really compressed way to bloom, leaf out, flower, fruit, and do all the things they need to do in a short period in the spring.
Yeah.
So your audience will go for high chill varieties.
Right, exactly. And one of the things you talk about in the book, you mentioned how the roots are storing up all this energy so that when spring comes, they just, the whole tree is like engaged, and it has to produce, and this is how it's different from an ornamental tree. I mean, ornamental trees flower, but they don't produce these huge amounts of fruit, and a lot of energy has to go into that. So this is another reason why you have to have such good soil, because you need to replenish all the energy that's lost in the fruit production.
That's very true. You could say that fruit tree growing is a marathon. There are a typical apple will live 80 to 100 years. There are pears in the hills of Tuscany, Italy, that are guesstimated to be in excess of 250 years old. So it's a long marathon, but each year is in essence a sprint. You got to get out of the gate, down the track, get to the finish line, which is fruit harvest. And an inordinate amount of things happen early in the year. and so you want to be out in the orchard, fertilizing, mulching as soon as you can. But that's difficult to do early in the spring. So the idea of having the trees well tended, watered, and fertilized through mid-late summer, at that time they take resources, carbohydrates and nutrients, store them in their roots, and then they can translocate, shuttle them to fuel all the upsurge of activity that happens early in the spring.
Yeah, I love the graphics you have in here, all the wonderful information, not just about chill hours. You've got a chart, shows chill hours for all kinds of different trees. But you talk about cover crops and you list things. You don't leave people to their own devices. You don't say, well, you need to throw in a cover crop and then,
then go to the next chapter.
Right, exactly. No, you're actually telling people exactly what they need. Did you want to jump in?
I have a question I'd like to ask.
Okay.
With all the great information and the how-tos, for somebody who might have a fruit tree in their yard that has been neglected, that, well, it was there. As you said, you inherited it when you bought the house, and we're coming into the winter season. What would be like the best thing somebody could be doing for a tree that has pretty much had no care?
Yeah, okay. Here's the deal. This is probably the most commonly asked question I encounter. Yeah,
Okay.
that's nice. Or people come to workshops. Yeah, but my trees don't look like yours. And here's the deal. A tree doesn't get out of hand in 1 year, and you can't bring it back in 1 year. What you need to do is just to balance that tree out. You're probably growing a good deal of firewood, not so much fruit. And there's better ways to get firewood than growing fruit trees. So what you do is you want to reclaim the tree. You want to bring it down in size and simplify its form. Fruit tree growing is about sunlight management. You need to get sunlight into the center of your tree to get good fruit. So you engage in some thinning cuts, but you don't do it all at once. As I said, a tree doesn't get out of hand in 1 year. You're not going to bring it back in 1 year. In fact, if you do too many cuts on a tree, the tree will go bonkers.
Yeah, I think you said 2 or 3 years to bring it back.
Yeah, you can double up. You can do winter and summer pruning. You look at the tree, envision the tree you think you want, and then start thinning 25% in the winter, 25% in the summer. Go through 2 years, that should equal 100%, and you'll have a more reasonable tree.
Mm-hmm.
I have a specific question myself because my neighbors and I are exchanging fruit. I give them tomatoes and they give me peaches because they live in Chicago, but her family has a farm in Michigan and they're growing peaches.
They grow some amazing peaches in Michigan.
She gave me some of the best peaches I've ever had in my life. And they're Flaming Fury peaches. Paul Friday, you familiar with that guy? And it's a PF 25. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, it's what I call peaches fall into two categories, old school and new school. Mm-hmm. It's a new school peach. And maybe there can be too much of a good thing, that is with sugar. Some of these new peaches are like the Flaming Fury, are insanely sweet.
Yes.
That's great.
What's wrong with that?
A little vanilla ice cream with it?
Okay, I'm old school in that regard. I like an old-timey peach as well as the new peaches.
Yeah.
That is one that has plenty of sugar but some balancing acidity.
Yeah, I get it.
But it's hard to look askance at those new peaches like the Flaming Fury and such. They are sugar.
The other thing I'm going to call you out on just a little bit, but I understand because guys like you, I've talked to people who have grown apples and they say, oh yeah, you like Honeycrisp? Oh yeah, you haven't even tasted an apple, I happen to like Honeycrisps, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is you can't find anything that's like the most exotic apple you can get in most stores.
Or even a lot of the farmers markets.
Yeah, or maybe a pink lady. That's kind of it. How do we get more of these apples out there?
Well, you've got to grow. I mean, it's very true. I'm an apple snob.
And you got about 30 seconds here. So
okay. What you do is you look at small nurseries online, and they'll stock a whole range of trees, old and new, and you plant them. Or you can encourage your local growers to plant some of these. But ain't nothing wrong with Honeycrisp, ain't nothing wrong with Pink Lady. It's just there's more out there in terms of...
Orin Martin, thank you so much. Fruit trees for every garden. Oh,
Rick.
All right, we're done here.
Rick
Orin,
on the phone.
That was fantastic. Really appreciate the conversation. I'd love to do it again sometime, and I'm wishing you all the success on this book.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you come through Chicago, let us know.
I will, and it's nice to know that you folks are putting this type of information out on the airwaves. And thanks for being such a kind, gentle host. Host plural.
Well, our job is not to beat up on you. Our job is to get the information. And I got to tell you, it's a terrific book. I'm going to
It's great, yeah.
Hardly recommend. What I told folks on the blog is that everybody who wants to grow a fruit tree should pick up this book and read it at least twice, and then start planting.
You're too kind. Thanks a lot.
All right, Orin. Take care.
Right.
Have a great Sunday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have you ever walked into a hair salon and been overwhelmed by the smell of chemicals? Well, that's never going to happen at Organic Roots Eco Salon. They
Do we
use
have
only
Rick?
the safest, most natural, professional hair products available to make sure you get great color results that last and won't harm the environment or you. Their salon products and services are free from ammonia, formaldehyde, and other toxins typically found in hair color, perms, and keratin smoothing treatments. Organic Roots also offers a complete menu of safe straightening treatments, including the non-toxic Magic Sleek and Cezanne keratin smoothing products.
We'll see on Eddie
that let
Vedder
you
because that's a
shampoo the same
movie
day.
soundtrack.
They even repurpose hair clippings, recycle product containers, and use
But it hasn't
LED
zapped us
lighting.
immediately,
Now
so-
that's green.
That's good.
Walk into 21st century hair care for women and men at Organic Roots Eco Salon, 3417 Dempster in Skokie. Book your appointment at organicrootsecosalon.com or call
We got Rick, so we're good.
847-423-2653. Health
know,
and
it's
beauty.
just-
You no longer have to sacrifice one for the other.
So many
Stay in touch with the Mike Novak Show. Find us on Facebook
things
at
reading
The
through here
Mike
going,
Novak
wow, how
Show.
about that? You know,
Use the
just
Twitter handle at Mike
lots
Now.
of details.
Send us a photo on Instagram at
But
The
yeah,
Mike
we're-
Novak Show.
Many more
or
than we
write
could
to
get
us,
to in a
Mike
conversation.
At
Yeah,
MikeNovak.net.
well-
We're also at theGreenDivas.com and on the Gab Radio Network.
But like you say, where do you
Podcasts
get
and
all
blog
these
posts are
apples?
available
You just
every
you
week
don't
at
see them anywhere.
Yeah, no, you don't.
MikeNovak.net. Sign up for posts in our newsletter on the homepage and support the
Like I
sponsors
said, the
who
most
support
exotic
us.
is like
Look for their logos and specials at
Pink Lady.
MikeNovak.net.
The Dave Ramsey Show.
Chicago Smart Talk, AM 1590 and FM 95.9, the exclusive home for the Dave Ramsey Show in Chicago.
More cowbell. Welcome back to the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki. We need a little less conversation, a little more action. You got some action for us there, Peggy?
Yeah, because even gardeners sometimes get a second chance. City Grange, Chicago's newest and most unique garden center, now has fall veggies ready to pop into your kitchen garden for another round of fresh, tasty greens. Think Asian pears, peas, spinach. If you miss the spring, you get a second chance as the cooler fall temps arrive. Grow them in a container for the last fresh-picked salads of the year. So you want to head over today to 5500 North Western Avenue at Catalpa right now. Well, actually, probably right after the show ends.
No, you can listen to the show on the way over because
Yeah.
the show's almost over
Yeah.
here. We got Rick DeMaio coming up, but
And he'll let us know about the rain, which
Yeah.
will help to water your fall garden. And as always at City Grange, there's valet parking on weekends. CityGrange.com. Learn, shop, blossom.
this is the Mike Novak Show with Peggy Malecki, and that guy we talked about, meteorologist Rick DeMaio, is on the phone. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, guys. Welcome to the last day as as you mentioned previously, the last official day of summer 2019. So in your eyes, I know, but how did it end? Did you like this summer? Did you want it differently? Warmer, cooler, wetter, drier?
I thought it was decent. I thought it was just fine. It was not not overly hot, not overly dry. I was kind of surprised. We were talking in the first hour about Monarchs, and I was reading one of your colleagues. Well, actually, not a colleague, but the woman up in Wisconsin with the Journey North. Which is now at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Arboretum, and she was talking about how the weather was perfect for monarchs this year, which is one of the reasons that they did.
Really?
Yeah, and I thought it was overly cool and wet in the spring, but she said it was not too cool and not too wet, so that kind of surprised me. So
That was the Arboretum director, Karen Oberhauser.
Right. and it made me rethink the whole summer because those of us who grew tomatoes know it was kind of an iffy year. In fact, there was an article in the Trib the other day about what a iffy tomato year it was. So, in general, I thought the spring was kind of lousy, but the summer was good.
And up in Lake County, the summer was a little too wet for parts of it.
Yeah, and if you remember, Peg, you and I were going back and forth on how variable the rainfall was, depending on whether or not you were maybe in northern Lake County, which last week got 10 inches of rain. Southern Lake County got a little bit less, and then obviously all that rainfall filled up the watershed system, flooded the Des Plaines and the Fox River. Of course, that's what everybody is thinking about today, only because we're still under a flash flood watch, and I sent this information to you guys about 10 minutes ago. And then when you look at that area, you go, oh my God, we're going to get flooding again. But you know what's been interesting about this event, even though some of the co-op observers show anywhere between 1.5 inches and almost 2 inches in some areas, it's come over a long period of time. We've gotten some breaks. The ground, I think, has been able to kind of soak up some of that rain. I think we've seen in the past when you have a lot of dry weather, the water runs off very, very quickly. And then we're getting a little bit of a break now with more rain coming back later on this afternoon and tonight. Even if we get like another 1.5 to 2 inches, you look at the overall event and you're like, oh my God, 3 to 4 inches, that's going to flood everything. But again, it's coming over a long period of time. It should stay to the south of us, and therefore, those people living along the Des Plaines and the Fox River around McHenry Lake in northern Cook County, I think we're going to be okay. So that's my deterministic forecast, which is a yes or a no, or a thumbs up or a thumbs down, as opposed to a probabilistic forecast. Hopefully everybody can kind of breathe a sigh of relief there.
Well, up here, I'm not worried about what's going on here unless it happens to all of a sudden get really crazy dry, which it tends to do sometimes. But if it hasn't been crazy dry by now, I suspect that we're going to be fine for the rest of the fall leading into the winter. I mean, my concern always is, are your trees and shrubs hydrated? Do they have enough water to get through the winter, especially the evergreens? Because, as you know, Rick, they continue to transpire over the winter, but they cannot draw up water if the ground is frozen. So it's especially crucial with those trees. What does concern me a little bit is Texas having the second 1,000-year rain event in 2 years. At least that's what I read in one article. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and if you look at that, information I gave you, here it is, Tropical Depression Imelda, who was a tropical storm, as I told my students, for about what we call in the world of meteorology, a cup of coffee. That's how long she was a tropical storm for. That thing produced over 40 inches of rain. That turned out to be the seventh wettest tropical storm, or you have to be careful here, tropical system ever. You can have a tropical depression, tropical storm, and a hurricane. And if you look at the information also that I send you, it's not so much how much rain fell, but what they do is they can normalize it over a certain area. And it was still twice as less, or I should say half of what fell with Harvey. But then you go to those people who live down there, and you're like, how much more can you take? And at what point do you bail out? But even if you bail out, who's going to buy your house? Because if you're now living in a new area that's now become flood prone, the value of your house, as we've seen here in the Des Plaines area along the Big Bend River area, it's worthless at this point. And this is what eventually has to get to local officials, whether it's city, county, state, or federal, about what to do in some of these situations. We're beyond the tipping point. You're not going to start to drop ice cubes into the Gulf of Mexico. Those people have to start demanding some sort of flood mitigation adaptation. Otherwise, it's going to happen like not every 500 years, pretty much every 5 years.
Yeah, you can't have 1,000-year events every 5 years and continue to build homes in those areas. I got about 20 seconds before I need to get you to before I need to get you to a forecast, but I posted an article about the ice in Greenland behaving in really odd ways now, and it's forming these sheets that doesn't absorb water anymore but causes it to run off. Did you see anything about that, Rick?
Yeah, I have. What happens is once ice melts, we all know about it. When it remelts, it melts in kind of a smooth way. So instead of the crevices where the water actually gets caught in it, it runs off, and obviously that also adds to a rise in sea level as well. But I think next week we could talk also about how much ice melted at the end of the summer. We always look at it in two ways: how much ice formed at the end of the winter, and how much ice melted in the summer. We can talk about that next week, Mike.
All right. Well, give us a quick forecast. You already alluded to it.
Yeah, so about 1 inch to 2 inches of rain again between now and probably about midnight. So I think the bulk of it stays south and east. The heaviest rain should be over with by about 8 or 9 o'clock. Warm and humid today. We're getting used to the warm Septembers. Mostly cloudy early tomorrow, nice in the afternoon. Low to mid-70s tomorrow, then warmer by the end of the week. 80s by next weekend.
Wow. Okay. Sounds good. Let's keep it going. Rick DeMaio, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week. We'll talk about glaciers then, too.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. I want to thank everybody on the show, our two scientists, Doug Taron and Allen Lawrence. I want to thank Orin Martin and his fantastic book. Pick up a copy of Fruit Trees for Every Garden. Of course, Rick DeMaio, Andrew, Ellie. Boy, we're early. All right. Until next time.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Until next time, go green or
go home.
Stadler?
What?
Is that it?
Yes, it's over. How'd you like it?
I don't know. I slept through the whole thing.
What a jerk
You
move.
didn't miss much.